afternoon, everyone. So today is a great day. Today is the culmination of 10 years of work, hard work. If we think back to 2007, try to recall a lexicon that encompassed our economic development efforts here in southern Vermont. We had just begun identifying the challenges our economy faced and understanding their underlying causes. We knew so little about identifying and aligning our assets, sector analysis, clusters, performance predictions, all critical to aligning our assets and understanding a comprehensive economic development plan. This was going to be focused to maximize the scarcity of resources, both human and financial capital, to focus on those dynamics most likely to grow the economy. So many in this room today, and others not here, were critical in helping make that happen. Nobody had written a roadmap for southern Vermont economic development, but together we gathered the tools needed to plot our course, and we are doing an amazing job. It is very fitting here today in Dover that we gather these longtime regional partners to host a summit on connectivity while also announcing an EDA CEDS Planning Award for further economic development strategic planning. 10 years ago, my colleague Laura Sibilia, where are you, a Dover resident, started asking questions. And anyone who knows her understands that when Laura asks questions, she gets answers. Supported by Jeff Lewis, Bill Colvin, Meg Streeter, Bob Stevens, and many others, Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies was born. And it was in search for answers as to why broadband and cell-service resources were not coming into the region. We learned early nobody was coming to save us. We wanted to help. We had to roll up our sleeves, learn how to do economic development in rural southern Vermont on our own, with help from our state and federal resources, but nonetheless learn it on our own and create our own solutions. CEDS and its affiliate entity, the BDCC, has been fortunate to partner with many talented individuals and organizations over the years. And some folks ask, what is the difference between BDCC and CEDS? And CEDS has no employees, contracts with the BDCC to implement its initiatives. Or said simply, CEDS leads with strategy and insight. BDCC builds programs and projects. Last week, we published our first ever attempt at a joint BDCC-CEDS annual report intended to highlight some of those relationships and partnerships and the impact. So it's dense, it's a first-time report, a lot of background and history in it, but I do hope you'll take the opportunity to read through it. We've got some distributed to many, and celebrate all the great things that are happening in the region. We're really proud to have been recognized by the largest economic development professionals association, the International Economic Development Council, last year, and they awarded us the silver medal for the implementation of our CEDS. And what that award recognized is that a strategy is only as good as its implementation. So we're really pleased about that. BDCC staff and crew took the time to maximize that CEDS plan and stay true to it, and over time deliver the results. And we so look forward to working with our Bennington County counterparts as together we help build a strategic economic development plan for southern Vermont. Not always as sexy as implementing, planning, the really thoughtful, exhaustive, deliberate kind of planning is the single most important element in rural economic development success. We've shown that, and we know it, and we're going to live by it. And planning has brought both Bennington and Windham counties together today for the Southern Vermont Economic Development Zone, CEDS. Missing from my remarks today are numerous acknowledgments and thank yous to all the people that helped make that happen. And someone who needs no introduction to this audience, a good friend of mine and founding and current CEDS board member, a longtime economic development practitioner with local, regional, and statewide experience, Bill Colvin, will be coming forward to provide appropriate attributions and acknowledgments as he offers additional insight into how we've planned and built the capacity to develop this two-county strategy. Bill?
Thank you, Adam. Welcome, everybody. We are absolutely, as Adam noted, excited to be here for this next step in building an even more vibrant economy in southern Vermont. As Adam noted, I have a series of thank yous, which will be on behalf of all of the regional groups, both in Windham and the Bennington region, to do today. The order in which I go through these thank yous, I think, will help illuminate as well the process that we have gone through in the Bennington region to be valuable partners to Windham in this effort. So I'd like to start with a thank you to the Economic Development Administration for seeing the value in our application for a joint planning effort to build a Southern Vermont CEDS, and in particular Matthew Suchodolski, who has been a good partner to this region since the early days after Tropical Storm Irene, when Matthew showed up in the region and has been at the EDA to support and guide us since that time. It certainly goes without saying that these types of awards require support from the federal delegation as well, and I'm delighted and thankful that Senator Leahy's office, Senator Sanders' office, and Representative Welch's, Congressman Welch's office are all here today, and you'll hear from them shortly. So thanks to our federal delegation. In 2015, the Vermont legislature created the Southern Vermont Economic Development Zone, recognizing the particularly acute and unique economic development challenges faced in the two southernmost counties. It was an important step to solidify what was then a growing relationship between Bennington and Windham counties. And a number of our local delegates in this room, Representative Botsow, Olson, Representative Sibilia, and Senators Ballant and White, were instrumental, as was the rest of the local Bennington and Windham delegations, to seeing the value in this. Through the Southern Vermont Economic Development Zone, which came out of that, there were a series of recommendations primarily centered on the number one recommendation, which was building out a Southern Vermont CEDS, building off the success of the Windham Regional CEDS. The Zone Committee made that recommendation. They dug in a very short period of time to make that recommendation, along with a series of others, and you will hear from Michael Keene as a representative of the Zone Committee. We owe them the thanks for that work, led very well by Wayne Granquist, who apologizes he cannot be here today. In 2016, after the report of the Southern Vermont Economic Development Zone, the Vermont legislature, again through our local delegates' leadership, appropriated a $50,000 special appropriation to the Bennington region, recognizing that Bennington was behind Windham County with regard to the ability to do regional economic development. And that specific $50,000 appropriation provided us with the charge of identifying the resources that would make regional economic development possible in the Bennington region, to establish a steering committee similar to that of the CEDS effort in the Windham side in Bennington, to educate the region about what it meant to do regional economic development, and in particular, what it meant to build out a comprehensive economic development strategy, and to create the first ever Southern Vermont Economic Development Summit, which we did with great success with our partners in the Windham region last May, with over 130 people coming to Stratton to hear national level speakers and really hear about all of the exciting things happening in Southern Vermont, as well as the plans for the future, including what we then hoped would be a Southern Vermont CEDS. Special thanks as well to the Agency of Commerce and Community Development for administering that grant. And you will hear from Deputy Secretary Ted Brady in just a moment. I'd like to thank as well the RED group, the Regional Economic Development Group in the Bennington side. That is the group that formed to do regional economic development capacity. It is the equivalent, if you will, of the CEDS board on the Windham side. It's an informal yet completely committed group set up to serve this regional economic development function. It's nearly 30 strong, primarily private sector, representing retail, service, hospitality, manufacturing, and finance. In April of this year, when we made the plea to take the step, formally reach out to partner with the Windham region to do a Southern Vermont CEDS, I asked, please do not raise your hand if you're not completely committed to this process, if you are not available to attend meetings, and most importantly, if you're not an advocate and speaker on behalf of regional economic development. those 30 hands plus went up, and I can tell you those people have been completely committed since that day. And I think it speaks volumes to the commitment of those people and how interested and eager the Bennington region is to be a valuable partner with Wyndham. I'd particularly like to thank Jason Dolmich and David Reese, who have stepped up as the chair and vice chair of that effort to kind of take us to the next level and move it out of a staff responsibility to a privately led responsibility. David and Jason have been at every meeting and been completely committed, and we appreciate their leadership. And certainly last but not least, great thanks to our partners in the Wyndham region, Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation and CEDS, as well as the Wyndham Regional Commission, who has been a supporter of our efforts in the Bennington region as well. Through the Southern Vermont Economic Development Zone effort and before, they have supported the efforts of Bennington County. First, by allowing me to continue to serve on the CEDS board as I transition from work in the Wyndham region back to Bennington. At that point, the board recognized the opportunities for doing things together and saw having a constant voice from the Bennington region could be helpful going forward. And I think that was an important step. For partnering along with the Wyndham Regional Commission with the Bennington region to do the EDA Disaster Recovery Grant after Tropical Storm Irene, and now up to and including the Bennington region in the first ever Southern Vermont Economic Development CEDS. They had the momentum in the Wyndham region through their successful CEDS implementation and planning process, and it was a worthy consideration as would it in any way derail those efforts in the momentum to kind of reach out and expand and bring on Bennington into that region. And we are particularly appreciative of the fact that there was a belief from CEDS and BDCC that moving forward more strongly together to attack our common challenges and leverage multiple opportunities through an expanded regional approach was the direction to go. So thank you to all of those folks. I'm delighted to ask to come up to say a few words, Deputy Secretary of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, Ted Brady.
First, let me thank Bill and acknowledge that Bennington and Bennington County and all of Southern Vermont is better off having you there, Bill, and having you work on these things. You've been a great leader and a great piece of this success. So I look at this incredible decade-long experiment in planning, implementation, and action, and I question, how did this work? How has it worked so far? And before I get to my belief on that, let me say it's worked so well that when we at the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, when Secretary Sherling and the governor and I talked about what our 4 or 5 year plan was on economic development, we recognized that something happening here in Southern Vermont is unique, special, and we need to find a way to replicate it across the state. This network of people, this collaborative and aligned action, or alignment of that network, and then the call to action that this planning has put in place has created a regional economy that we're trying to replicate. Not your economy, not your unique sense of place and unique piece of an economy, but just the concept. You try to look around and find successful models, and as Bill mentioned, an internationally recognized successful model, a nationally acclaimed model through the EDA, and you try to understand what pieces of that success are replicable. And when I sit there and I get asked all the time, what is it that's the key to rural development in this country? I am tempted often to shrug my shoulders and say, I haven't figured it out yet. But I also see a couple of things. One, we talk about people. We have a people problem in Vermont. And it's not just a demographics people problem. It's the really important thing. We all know the numbers, right? Senator Batsa, you guys talk about this all the time. We know that our state is shrinking, except for Chittenden County. We know that our state is aging. We know that our workforce is struggling, and that our labor participation rate is struggling. But we have a people problem in that we are not enabling people to come forward and lead us into this next chapter of Vermont's future. What does that mean? I think you look at select boards, I think you look at economic development groups. I think you look at any kind of organization, and you can judge the success based on how stale that organization is, based on the people that have been involved. It's the same people involved, right? How do you engage new people? You did it here. Something about this planning process engaged people I had never met in the 15 years in economic development that I've spent in the state of Vermont. So something about this network pulled people out of the woodwork and got them to participate in the next critical piece of the economic success, or the piece of success of this model, which is planning and alignment. I don't think from outside this region you can, maybe from within this region, you can fully understand the envy of other people that would like to get their hands on economic development administration money. They look at southern Vermont and say, why is there a sucking sound in Brattleboro and Bennington for economic development administration money? And as Chris and, I'm so sorry, Megan will, get a brain block, Megan. Oh, it's only been 10 years. And as they'll point out, it's because there's not another group of people that are lining up good projects to send to the EDA. There's not a conspiracy theory. But this alignment of this network, so you pull these people out, this alignment of this network is something really unique. And it's partially built into the CEDS plan, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy plan in my mind. But it's also built in an engagement in that plan like no other has figured out. We have, I think, 2 economic development districts in the state of Vermont. This is potentially the next step to this process becoming a federally recognized economic development district. The state has a CEDS plan. I think the CEDS plan is a really great thing, but we didn't do as good a job as you did as engaging people in that plan. And then there's the third key part of the success of this network, which is a call to action. And too many of our plans, so I'm sorry to repeat something that I keep saying. When Mike and I came into office at the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, we said, okay, what next? We looked in our drawers and there were 150 different reports on community and economic development in our drawers. I kid you not, for the past few years. I said, wow, that's a lot of reading. So sorry to repeat an old joke, but we asked a woman named Penn McKenzie to read all those. She did, she gave us a report and then she quit. But the report was fantastic because it found these central themes and these central efforts, but it showed that there were 150 reports that touched on economic and community development that didn't have a call to action. So the difference in this network, you had a call to action. You have projects with BDCC is a different organization than every RDC in the state of Vermont. Bennington is a different RDC/RPC than anywhere in the state of Vermont. That's how this whole model should work, because every regional economy is so different. So those are the 3 things that I think Becca and Bill and I and Oliver and Senator White and others will go down to Montpelier, go up to Montpelier, sorry, that was a force of habit from my words. Go up to Montpelier and be talking about this as a success. We need to unlock the power of regional economies across the state. You figured something out. We are so incredibly proud and grateful that we have something down here that we think is working, and we're going to try to keep it working and give you the resources that you need to keep it working. And I simply want to end by saying the idea that you can engage how many communities between Bennington and 44 communities. You can engage USDA rural development, EDA, the congressional delegations, the state of Vermont, foundations, Department of Labor, Agency of Commerce. You keep going down that list. Nobody else is doing that in the state of Vermont. So congratulations. Thank you for the 10 years in the past. The hardest part comes now, which is to continue to implement that call to action and make sure that you never forget the success to this process from the beginning, which is engagement of people from every community and every walk of life in these 2 counties. So congrats, and I think I might turn it back over to Bill. Is that Chris? All right, so I think everybody knows, but Senator Leahy has been such an enormous supporter of the Economic Development Administration. I remember having conversations post-Irene with BDCC and with Bennington about what comes next. And the Senator was instrumental in bringing EDA to the table to have these conversations, and it's my great honor to introduce Chris Saunders from Senator Leahy.
Ted. It's a real treat to be here on behalf of the Senator, who I know would have loved to have been here this afternoon, but is stuck in Washington and dealing with everything that is going on in the Senate this week. I think there are a couple themes that were touched on between Adam's remarks and Ted's remarks and Bill that really are at the forefront of how Senator Leahy has been working on both federal budget issues as well as how he's approached economic development. And what the regional economic development strategy concept Adam referenced, where we've been at a time of shrinking resources or kind of stagnant resources for a while now at the federal level. And in some instances, federal policy has really shifted to provide, require organizations to participate. In the economic development world, it's been a little bit more on the carrot, on the incentive side of things to say, we are going to encourage you to participate and collaborate. And I don't think in Vermont we have seen that be quite as successful as we hoped, so he is thrilled that these two organizations have stepped up to partner on developing a strategy that's going to look at a true regional economy and how we can move things forward. Ted referenced Senator Leahy's long work with the EDA, and I think that the Senator has a lot of faith that this process is going to work here because he's seen how these communities have been willing to step up and access EDA resources. He's put energy behind directing the EDA to focus on communities that are post-nuclear power plants that have been decommissioned. And we saw the way that BDCC stepped up to access those funds. We're putting a focus this year on EDA, trying to prioritize things in the forest-based economy because we're seeing the struggles happen across northern New England of low-grade wood markets collapse. And we know that we have entities in Vermont that have really stepped up, that are stepping up to make sure that they can access those funds. But the key to all of that is that there's collaboration. And I think that's going to be the watchword for the times to come. We're not seeing on the federal scale large new investments in public programs, programs at USDA Rural Development. Max is here from USDA RD in Vermont. As the Senator approaches the Farm Bill and uses his position there, I think he's going to continue to look at how we write Farm Bill programs, rural development programs that identify projects that are going to stand out above the rest, that are going to be tied to a regional plan, that are going to be demonstrated to have community buy-in. So I think he's really excited that this is where we are at the outset of the process for these communities, and knows that you're positioning yourself very well to take advantage of the opportunities that he is going to be trying to advance. He says to us all the time, you know, why am I fighting for this program? Why am I putting resources into this program? Are there Vermonters, are there stakeholders in the state that are going to be able to step up and take advantage of it? Because if not, we should be focusing our energy elsewhere. And I can go back to him and say, in Brattleboro or in Windham and Bennington counties, we have a great group of folks that are stepping up to the plate and are going to take advantage of every opportunity you're sent their way. So congratulations on behalf of the Senator. You guys are doing great work. Keep it up. We need you to succeed for all of the state because as Ted and others have said, what you're doing here is unique. We've seen others come together to form regional plans and these economic development districts, and even though they've had that designation for a while yet, they're not firing on all cylinders the way that you are. So keep up the good work, and again, congratulations.
Hello, everyone. My name is Erica Campbell. I work for Senator Sanders, and I'm really excited to be here today. To congratulate you all on behalf of the Senator, mainly. I'm also really excited to be here today. I grew up in Vermont. I've lived in 4 counties. I've never been to Dover. I know, it's crazy. I even worked in a Weston Playhouse in high school. So, I mean, it is unbelievable that I haven't been here. So I'm really excited to be here. To congratulate you all. And on this recent EDA grant, and really, we've been hearing so much buzz all over the state about Southern Vermont. And so when Adam said, you know, we should be proud, you really should be proud. It's pretty amazing. We're hearing about the workforce, all the workforce stuff going on in the southeastern part of the state, entrepreneurial development, the Ecovation Hub, the list goes on. And in the southwest part of the state, I've been hearing a lot about, obviously, the Putnam Block, investments in development, the Shires Connector, some transportation investments, and I know it sometimes feels like you guys are alone in the southern part of the state, and I do hear that, but you really are being talked about as a model, and people are really excited about what's happening down here. So I hope that you guys are all really proud of that. I actually, Bernie is a man of action, and he's really happy to see a lot of this happening. I come from a planning background, so as Ted was just talking about this opportunity for Bennington and Windham counties to really come together in this integrated way, I just think is really phenomenal, and I'm really excited. I know our whole staff and the Senate and Senator Sanders are really excited to see what happens from this. So congratulations. We look forward to hearing about the progress as we move forward.
Welch's office. The congressman would have loved to have been here today, but he's also in DC addressing the new tax plan that's come out. So he's busy, but I was with him yesterday and talked about coming down here, and he sends his congratulations and his excitement. The congressman comes back to Vermont as much as possible because it is what drives him to be able to do the work that he does in DC and deal with the situation in DC. So he spends a lot of time here, and while he has a full schedule when he's in DC, when he's in Vermont, he's also just as busy. It's amazing that he sleeps because of how much he's getting out and about. So he spent a lot of time in southern Vermont as well as every other region in Vermont, and echo the acknowledgments about what's happening here. When he's visiting communities, often what we're hearing about are things like, we need to remove silos because we have to be able to work together, and we need to do economic development. And anecdotally, you're hearing about other communities that haven't quite gotten it figured out as well. I was meeting with a community in another part of Vermont who said, we really need to do economic development, and we're hiring somebody, and they're going to come in and they're going to bring business, and we're going to get that one person in. I'm like, okay, well, what type of community support do you have? Well, yeah, no, they're supporting us to hire somebody to come in. Well, hiring one person is not an economic development strategy, and I think that southern Vermont has really showed what an economic development strategy looks like. It's bringing all of the players together, talking about what are the needs and how can we get from A to B and B to C. And talking about, okay, how do we break down silos? How do we work together? And it's more in southern Vermont than just silos. There's a mountain. Breaking down a mountain is not economically possible or viable. So talking about how do we work through that, and I think we've seen with the leadership from Bennington and from Windham how that can be achieved, and that you can't let a physical barrier as well as other economic silos keep us from working together. The other thing I want to say is that while the federal delegation is incredibly proud to be supporting these efforts, it's really important for the congressmen, and I would say for the senators too, but that there is that local buy-in and the state buy-in, and the state was amazing in their support for these efforts. The legislature, not just saying we support it, but we support it, and here are some funds to get where you need to go. And that makes me really excited that I get to introduce the state representatives and senators who have been so instrumental in getting those efforts off the ground. I know I don't get to introduce Representative Sebelia, she's not speaking, but was hugely instrumental in this, so a big thank you to her. And I would like to introduce to speak, I'm not sure if there's any order, so I'm going to say everybody and then come up as you want. We're going to have Representative Olson, Senator Ballant, and Senator Botsow, or Representative Botsow, come up to talk about their efforts in this. And so congratulations again. Thank you so much.
So thank you all for coming out here today. This is a really exciting day for me personally, because I actually get to conclude my service in the legislature at this event. Today is technically my last day in office, so before I move on to other things. But I do want to just take a moment to really recognize the incredible efforts of Representative Sebelia, who's not up here speaking. And when she was first elected several years ago, we got together and we both had a shared interest in economic development. And she really, really had incredible passion and wanted to get something done. So we ended up having a number of conversations, and we started to broaden the conversation out amongst other representatives and senators in Southern Vermont. And the vision collectively that we came together with folks across different political parties from both Bennington and Windham County. A number of folks, including folks who aren't even here today, came together and said, we are all in this together. We have to put some focus around economic development. And none of us, no town in Southern Vermont, no county even, is going to be successful going it alone. We have to do this together. So so a number of us got together, we drafted up a bill, introduced it, and brought it to Representative Botsow's committee. We're very fortunate to have the chair of the Economic Development Committee, actually based in and representing Bennington, was an incredible support and helped get this through the House. And really what we asked for was, we want to designate Southern Vermont as an economic development zone. And we want to do that for a number of reasons. One, we want to encourage people to start working together and collaborate together even more than they already were. And secondly, we wanted to create recognition at a statewide level that Southern Vermont was a unique region with its own unique set of economic development concerns and opportunities. And third, we had the vision to say there are federal funds available, and if we can get together and create a critical mass, we'll gain much more attention. So we were successful in getting that through the House, and then with the support of Senator Ballant, who was on the Economic Development Committee on the Senate side of the House, we were able to get that passed through. We set up a committee, and then one of the first things, we set up a zone, and one of the first things, the other piece of that was the creation of a study committee that brought a lot of partners together. And that was led, as was indicated, by Wayne Granquist, lives in Weston. Significant experience at the federal level. Some of you may already know him from other venues. But he was instrumental in bringing this committee of folks together. A lot of different diverse viewpoints, put together a really comprehensive report, brought it back to the legislature, and that became the catalyst to secure funding at the statewide level that then went to Bennington County to help shore up their efforts, and has brought us here to this point today. So we're really proud of everything that everybody has been able to do with a very small piece of legislative action that really proved to be a catalyst. And the folks in this room and many other folks were really instrumental in making that happen. So with that, I'll turn over to my Senator Ballant. I think you're
It's really a pleasure to be here. About 7 years ago, I wrote an op-ed in the Brattleboro Reformer about my thoughts on how tough it was to make an economic go of things in Brattleboro and Windham County as a whole. And some folks at BDCC and CEDS reached out to me through that op-ed, and they said, you're thinking about ideas that we're thinking about. And this was long before I thought about running for the legislature. They said, come on down, we don't know how to plug you in, but we know you're caring about the things we're caring about. And that's where I met Laura Sebelia, and we had some incredible conversations about work and workforce development in the county. I was so excited to be in a group of people all thinking about things, not necessarily in the same way, but just having it on all of the tops of all of our minds that this is something that we had to deal with. So I want to start in thinking about this work here today, but I want to start with a story. Last week, I was walking from one meeting in Brattleboro to another meeting, and I was shuffling along because I was already late. Jeanette White knows this, we're constantly shuffling from one thing to another, double booked, and so an elderly man stopped me on the sidewalk. He recognized me, someone I've known for years. He's watched me with my kids downtown. He said, Becca, I have to ask you something. He said, I was at this meeting last night in Brattleboro, and it was a talk that was given, and it was a wonderful talk, and I was so excited, and then I looked around the room, and I realized that everyone in the room was over 65. And I said, oh, that's really interesting. And he said, why don't the young people care? Why aren't they here? And I said, well, that's one frame. I said, another frame is to think about all of the meetings that you've been to in the last month, and the literary festival, and the last time you went to church maybe in Brattleboro, and have you noticed that that actually is the demographic situation in our county? And he said, oh, now that you mention it, you're absolutely right. There actually aren't a lot of young people. When we passed the zone in the legislature, and we sent the bill out into the world as a law, and these folks came together to create the development zone, a piece of a really great report was written about the state of the county, Windham, and the state of Bennington collectively as a labor shed. And I want to quote from the zone report. And the backdrop to this was between 2000 and 2013, the under 18 population in our counties dropped 20%. Okay, so this is from the report. Quote, we must reverse current trends and retain and grow population. We must lower the average age. We have to raise the average wage. And we have to promote and embrace greater population diversity. In essence, they said, we need to repopulate southern Vermont. And then they ended with this particular section. They said, urgent action is needed. And we're still in that place. We, those of us in this room, we feel the urgency, but it's been a hard time trying to shine this light on this issue for some other folks who aren't thinking about these issues in this way. And many have been resistant to the truth for a lot of reasons. It's very scary to look at the statistics and see where we're headed economically and demographically. So I'm very grateful to Laura Sibilia and to Representative Olson and to Representative Botzau, because as soon as Laura came and said, this is important, they got it, and they were incredible advocates. I ended up being on the conference committee for the economic development bill that year, and saw how this issue is not particular to Brattleboro. It's not even particular to our region. It's pretty much, except for Chittenden County, it's a statewide issue. So there is urgency. So I want to thank those who were shining the light on this issue long before I arrived on the scene. And I want to really, truly thank the people who gave their time, volunteered their time on the zone to light a fire under many, many more people in these two counties. It's an incredible resource that we have in this report. It gives us a signpost for where to head. And I just want to say, I'm so thrilled that I live in a county where so many exciting things are happening. So I'm going to turn it over to Representative Botzau as Chair of the Economic Development Committee, or Commerce on the House side. Thank you, Bill.
So I think a lot has been said. In a sense, if this were a baseball game, I think you'd be at the point we've had the play-by-play, now you need the color. So I have three things I want to mention. I think if you start about it, I go back to, say, mid-70s. And at that point, the relationship between Brattleboro and Bennington was a high school rivalry. And that was what it was known for. Not only that, the road was terrible. It really was. I mean, it was dangerous to go in the mountains across the route. It's still, you know, it's still mountains, so it's whatever. So I'd like to go back to the point where Howard Dean made a commitment to fix Route 9. And in a sense, that made it actually possible for us to be people together instead of communities that are divided by mountain ranges. And I think that makes a point. The second point I'd like to come to is a point in time is that just by chance in the house we sit randomly. And I've always sat in the same seat. And the year Laura came, she got the seat right in front of me. And then right to her left was another rep we haven't mentioned today, which is Representative Kaya Morris from Bennington. And early on in the session, I remember Laura stood up, she turned around and looked at me in her inimitable way and basically said, how do I do this? You know, this is, you gotta do it. And, you know, I was chair of the committee at that point, and I think basically I said, put a bill in. You aren't going to do anything if you don't put a bill in. And so Laura and Kaya sponsored a Southern Vermont Economic Development Bill. And then we basically made sure, in the committee, you want to make sure everybody on the committee that are good ideas have a chance to go forward. And this one had legs. And it also had, I think another person who's pretty important to it is my vice chair, Mike Marcotte, because he also lives in a corner of the state, up just south of Newport, and he gets it. And it's sort of fascinating in Vermont that economic development leadership would be in a state like ours is that two people who live off in the corners, one person who happens to, he runs a Jimmy Quick Stop, happens to be really good at what he does, and me, I'm an artist. I live off in the other corner of that. I live in the corner of the corner. But in Vermont it works. And I think the reason why it works is because we learn very early the pleasure we have of working amongst each other and the trust and respect that everything is built on for all of us. So that brings me to a third place. Those conference committees were not easy. As well, it's like everything was negotiated, weren't they, Becca? Even though I knew what you wanted to do, you often sort of had to go, well, we care this and that. We had, had to go there. That's what always happens. But then you even get it through the conference committee, and you still got a piece that's got to get through settling the budget. And that one's even harder. So the first one was just get the zone, and the pushback was, well, why should you have one when the rest of the state doesn't have one? And we basically said, and Ted acknowledged it right off, this could be a model for how we can do regionalism to support a state effort, to support a federal effort, because if there's one thing that's really true, it is what all this is about is strategic alliances for mutual benefit. That's really what we're doing, And that's the name of the game these days, and it's struggling in education, but we're doing it in economic development. Okay. So there we were, and at that point, now Speaker Mitzi Johnson, she came to me, we were sitting in the hall waiting to adjourn on the last night, and she says to me, well, Bill, I can get you $25,000. And I said, oh my God, that's not going to work. Talked to Laura, and Laura was beyond upset. As she well should have been. And so Mike turned to me and said, well, you want to go talk to the speaker? So we went off, we talked to the speaker, we walked in, and Shop was the speaker at the time. He was always supportive. And he basically said, well, you really reached out to Mitzi. And because we were settling the very small amount of money that we have in economic development. People in this room are talking about $10,000 and $15,000 and $20,000 as if it's the end of the earth. And everywhere else we're talking millions and billions. And we have to do better in that regard, don't we, Ted?
Yes.
Yeah. Mitzi walked in and basically said, well, I could try this or that or whatever. Goes off to the Ethan Allen room and comes back in a little while and says, okay, I can get you $50,000, but you give this up. And yeah, there's an organization that lost a few dollars. And it was an organization it was the Vermont Arts Council, frankly. One you'd think that I would be carrying all of the water for. It was a good organization, but they've gone ahead with what they've done. So I think the real point of this story is nothing is easy in all of our celebrations. And nothing that we're going to do going forward is going to be easy. And we have to accept that. And we have to accept when we're talking about how collegial we are, we also have tons of voices living probably right next door to us wherever we are that still do not feel included and need to be part of the conversation on where and how we go. That's an opportunity and that's good work. So this Southern Vermont Economic Development Zone has really, I think, let's see, it's exceeded expectations, and I think it's going to exceed even more. So I've been very pleased, I've been an instrument in its development, and look forward to more of that. And I think, Michael, you're next.
I think you think you're right. Good afternoon, I'm Michael Keane. I was fortunate enough to be a member of the Southern Vermont Economic Development Zone Board. I'm speaking on behalf of Wayne Grantquist today, who cannot be here. So everything that has been said is really enough proven. I could shut up right now, it would be fine. But I want to say what I think Wayne would say. I think Wayne would say, number one, this group is doing big, important work for all of Vermont and perhaps New England in this region. I think we'd all agree with that. Number two, I think Wayne would say, we all are fortunate to have a proof of concept, model processes, and demonstrated success thanks to the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation and CEDS. So we're not going blind. What nobody has said so far, and I think Wayne would also say, is this is very damn exciting. This is a great opportunity for this region and for the state. A lot of people, some of the people that we haven't included yet from Bill's comments, would be very skeptical, or they would want this already done. I would respond to them, no way. I wouldn't miss going through this excitement and getting this process done for the world. And I know you all feel the same way. Well, congratulations on today. Thank you for letting me speak for a minute.
Okay, really now, I think we've just about said everything. And I'm so pleased and grateful that all of you were able to join us today. It's very important. What we haven't done, heard from all of our partners who are very important and who keep this moving. This process, this work is hard. It is hard to do rural economic development. And the difference that happens here could be. And so I would just ask first for members of the CEDS and RED group to stand. And then I'm going to ask the two chairs of CEDS and RED to come up, and I promise, guys, you can say like 2 sentences. Okay? So we can just have everyone stand in the CEDS and RED group. This is a portion of those folks. And it's my absolute pleasure to introduce the two chairs who are guiding private business, municipalities, nonprofits, volunteers, significant amount of time in this work that will take place over the next 2 years to develop this Southern Vermont CEDS. So Bob Stevens, who has been at this since the beginning with CEDS from Stevens and Associates, and Jason Dolmetsch from MSK Engineering. I think it's no mistake. Someone pointed out, I think David Reese, that we have 2 engineers leading this effort. So thank you, and we'll welcome them both up.
Thank you very much. I just want to say on behalf of the RED Group that we're really, really excited to be working on the future of Southern Vermont. I wanted to build briefly on the Senator's story about the individual going to a bunch of board meetings and only seeing people over 65, and I would just like to reflect, I have to attend meetings regularly, public hearings, and I would say from the opposite perspective, I'm usually the one sitting around there going, in 10 years I'm going to be the only one left. So, I was born in Bennington. I'm really very proud to be participating in helping to sort of push Bennington County and Windham County's economic future forward. And we all know that our work is hard. We know the challenges that we face, but I could say with great certainty that in Bennington County we are very used to pushing the river. So we are, our Red Group is a good collection of people, and we're very much committed to making the Southern Vermont economic community work. And I want to thank all of our participants for their commitment and effort. And yes, the great engineer joke. I think Bob was the one who said it at last month's meeting that I don't know why they would choose to give the keys to 2 engineers to one of these groups, but I'm convinced that it's because they must expect efficient, outcome-based processes from here. So we look forward to those positive outcomes. So thank you.
Very brief, and so yes, been at this for a while now, and at CEDS, but it's great to come to these meetings because you guys give us faith. I mean, you know, we're working on these things. It really is a group of people trying to figure out how you move a large economy, and that's connecting with others. You know, Ted went through a lot of the basics that we've seen. You know, we feel like things are happening. We're starting to see results. It's taken a long time. There were times when I'm not sure we were going to see results. We talked about it for a long time. So now that it's growing, now we're looking to work with Bennington. We're just excited that we can kind of go back at this, develop new strategies, keep implementing. And I hope, you know, part of the motivation, I'll tell a small story and then shut up because you've been at this for a while. But, you know, when we first started looking at this data, it was clear that people who worked hard in our county would expect to make $10,000 less than surrounding counties. And at some point we realized that's just not right. Why should my kids who grow up and stay here expect that they cannot, you know, have the same kind of opportunities in life that people just a county away in Franklin and Cheshire County? Something's wrong with that. And we didn't want to stand for it. We're not going to stand for it. So with your help, all of your help, thank you for having the faith that we'll get this done. And thank you for giving us faith that we're going to keep working at this and get this done. So, thank you.